Good morning and welcome to an episode of Camilla and I. I'm Mark Cooper if you're new to this channel, and I'm a wildlife photographer based here in the south of England in Salisbury, Wiltshire, UK. So what have we got for you today on Camilla and I? Well, firstly, don't forget to subscribe if you're new to this channel. Don't even watch the content, just hit the subscribe button in the bottom right hand corner for future videos. We do wildlife and nature photography, and we do honest reviews on equipment that we actually use here on Camilla and I. So yeah, hit that subscribe button before doing anything else. Anyway, what are we going to review today on Camilla and I? Well, it happens to be my favourite and not my most expensive. Well, simply put, this lens has to be my best and most dual purpose lens for wildlife photography. And if you haven't guessed already, it's the Sony 200 to 600mm f5.6 to 6.3 G Master lens. So firstly, why it's so good for my wildlife photography is the reach. 600mm gets you an awful lot of reach, and when you're dealing with small birds in the frame, goldfinches, tiny little meadow pipits, then as they appear in the frame, they're very small, and if you don't have a full frame 600mm reach, they will look pretty insignificant in the frame usually. So that's the first reason we go particularly for the 600mm end. Not only have we got this tremendous reach, but this lens is also incredibly sharp, and it's amazing for a G lens. It's not a GM lens, but it's incredibly sharp, so it's well worth purchasing just for its optical power alone. Thirdly, as a zoom, I've been caught out recently using my 600mm prime lens review to follow, because it's fixed at 600mm. With the 200 to 600, you have got this ability to draw back from the subject to a very usable 200mm. So it's very useful having the zoom feature, and indeed the zoom on this particular lens is a mere 90-degree twist of the barrel. The lens doesn't expand outwards, which is quite a good feature. It also stops moisture and dust crouching back in on the lens when you retract the zoom. So the fourth reason I'd go for this lens is weight wise. It weighs in at about 1.8 kilos, 3.4 pounds, something along those lines. And although this is heavy and you wouldn't want to carry it around all day long, it is actually a manageable amount. The 600mm, for example, weighs 3 kilos, so it's portable and it can be put in a standard sort of rucksack and carried around. Absolutely brilliant. Another angle with this lens is the price. At about £1,800 here in the UK, it is a bargain compared to, for example, the 600mm f4, but that's a whole different ball game. But comparatively, value for money wise, you get what you pay for with this lens. It's very good quality, it's very well built, and it's extremely sharp. So for £1,800 in this sort of sphere, it's the top end price in this sort of zoom range, but in this case you get what you pay for. So it can be used with the 1.4 and 2 times teleconverters. Obviously there's a problem with teleconverters in as much that this is f6.3 at the 600mm end. So if you stick a 1.4 teleconverter on it, it takes it to an f9 lens, and indeed the 2 times I think becomes f11. I haven't actually used it with the 2 times. I wouldn't recommend that at all. It's just it's too dark, doesn't let enough light into the sensor, so I'd stick with the 1.4, but it does work very well with the 1.4, so I can certainly recommend that. And then that takes it to 840mm at f.9. So yeah, worth getting the teleconverter just for this lens alone. So I just run through a couple of the optional extras I would purchase for this lens. So it's not just the £1,800 cost of the lens. I would also invest in a nice lens coat. This is a Moss Outdoor Gear Supplies. I'll leave a link to the Outdoor Gear Supplies. And this coats your lens in a nice protective foam. I think it's about £34. But it's very useful. And obviously, as the lens is white under here, we don't really want to flash around something white out in the field. So this moss colour really goes down quite well. I'm very pleased with the moss. It's sort of dual purpose, sort of covers all bases really, because you don't want to be fiddling around taking this protection cover off every 5 minutes. So anyway, that's the first accessory I would get with this lens. I would cover it in a nice moss colour. Okay, and the next accessory I'd go for is one of these iShoot feet. This is in a replacement. This is only a cheap, generic, made in China thing, but well worth getting hold of because it's got an Arca Swiss plate mount which directly mounts to the replacement foot. And this is a very useful piece of equipment, so I'd recommend one of these without a doubt. And then you can interchange it with the other foot, and you can use the other foot for other purposes, other mounting factors. But then it's just a question of easy on and off, and a replacement foot, which I think about 40-50 quid. So recommend a replacement foot. The next obvious feature when you've got a big lens like this is to have a really good strap, and I attach this to the actual barrel, and this is a optic made in USA strap, just a very nice padded rubber, so it doesn't hurt your neck too much when you do have to carry it. So yeah, that's a summary. Those are the accessories I would get with this. So it's a lens coat, shoe, strap, another £150 worth of kit to add to the lens, but it's well worth it. Yeah, so I started the video with a number of shots taken with the 200-600mm and taken with the Sony A9, and yeah, it's an awesome combination. But it works well with the all the cameras. I've currently got it mounted on the A7 III, and it works a treat. A very good lens. I missed out another optional extra on here, which is a 95mm filter. I don't necessarily recommend a filter on lenses because it does detract from quality, but of course it depends where you're taking your lens. If you're taking your lens up the Amazon, or indeed to salt water, for example, if you're going to the seaside, for example, link to Camilla at the seaside, because we do seaside visits, this is very good to really prevent moisture and dust actually getting into the front element, because obviously that's what you're trying to avoid, and scratching and whatnot. It's nice to have that. At least then if you did get splashed or something, you could take this off and you'd still have a clean lens underneath. So yeah, good little tip, that one. So yeah, I've got the other accessory, a 95mm UV filter. These are not cheap either. These are about £95, I think. So yeah, 95mm, quite a big thread. I'll get back on. Yeah, so I've taken some great shots with this lens. It's been an absolute stalwart, and I've had it for over a year now, and that's why I'm doing the review. Anyway, of course, it's got a couple of features on the actual control section here. We have autofocus and manual focus, so that's pretty self-explanatory. Then we have a focus limiter button, and this gives you 3 options as to the range in which you're focusing. And if you are focusing within a set range, it's well worth selecting one of these controls, because it will aid the speed of autofocus. So remember to set that if you're in a controlled situation, a hide or a predetermined position. Then we've got the optical steady shot mode, which is that on-off dial there. And then we have 3 modes for the optical steady shot, 1, 2 and 3. And 1 is basically very little whatsoever. You can have it set on that permanently, I suppose. 2 is for a sort of panning action, and 3 is for sort of erratic movements when you're following something in the sky and you're waving the camera all over the place. But it always pays to keep your camera steady at every opportunity. So yeah, anyway, I permanently have it set on about either 2 or 3, and it does seem to cut out when you mount it on the tripod, but again, technically you should switch it off, the optical steady shot, when it's mounted on a tripod. So yeah, take note of that. The other thing on the actual lens barrel is we have a rotate. When you're on a tripod, you can rotate to 90 degrees, 45, 90, 45. Brilliant, very useful feature, that one. Just doing portrait to landscape shots in an instant, very useful. And we have the zoom range, which is under this section here, and this is just a simple twist of about 90 degrees through the barrel, and that takes you from 200 to 600 in a tiny twist. Absolutely incredible feature without expanding the actual size of the lens. Very useful in the actual real world, and of course no rain, dust or moisture can get into the zoom pullback, which you have, for example, on the Nikon 200 to 500 millimeter. This is very good to have the internal zoom, so a very good feature. And the other item on the actual barrel is these points here, is the focus hold buttons, where you can hold them in and actually hold the focus lock on the particular subject and reposition. At least that's what I try and use them for. It comes with a lens hood. This one just sort of locates on the barrel and then just twists to lock in. It hasn't got a little locking mechanism, so it could technically be knocked off, but I haven't had it fall off yet in a year, so it's pretty good. As long as you've got it locked into play properly. It comes with this lens hood. So yeah, the lens hood could probably improve slightly, but it's adequate and reasonable for the cost of the lens. So I tend not to carry this lens around all day long, despite the fact it's not exceptionally heavy. It is still heavy enough, so try and avoid carrying it around all the time. And use of a monopod, link to monopod earlier video, very useful to have some support with you. Otherwise you are taking the whole strain all day long. I mean, you could literally go out for an afternoon's photography with this combination and a monopod, or a monopod with 3 feet. So yeah, well worth checking it. Anyway, my conclusions with this lens, having used it now for a year in the field, is that it's by far my most flexible and versatile lens, and it's a tremendous lens, and I would suggest that the Sony version of this sort of range is probably the best one out there. I haven't used the Canon version, and but for the price and range of motion, the internal zoom, the autofocus capability, which is lightning fast, or I don't know, I mentioned the autofocus capability. It's got 2 linear motors in it, and they are exceptionally quick at acquisition, particularly of birds in flight. Linked to birds in flight, yeah, You really can't go wrong with this lens. It is absolutely the bee's knees. It is extremely good for my wildlife photography, and that 200 reach to 600 really pushes the boat out and expands the limits of your photography. So I would really strongly recommend this lens as a Sony user myself. Yeah, so if you want to own the best, I'd say best in class, as it were, I would, and you're in the Sony system, I would rush out and buy this lens. I wouldn't hesitate. I'd get down to your local Castle Cameras store and get yours on order tomorrow if you fancy getting into wildlife photography, because this lens will certainly get you into it, and you will certainly enjoy photography with this lens. Anyway, I'll leave you with a few more shots taken with this awesome 200 to 600, all within the last year or so of ownership of this lens, and see what you think. But can't recommend it highly enough on Camilla and I. Don't forget, if you get anything out of this video, please like and subscribe, and leave any comments. If you've got any questions to ask Camilla and I, say we are pro amateur wildlife level, so let us know in the comments below anything I may have missed out, but I think it's well worth acquiring this lens. Have a good one. Bye from Camilla and I.